Ethan Morales had never imagined that life could feel so quiet. When he moved into the small neighborhood on the edge of town, he thought silence would heal him. After a difficult divorce and months of feeling lost, he believed a peaceful place might help him find himself again. But as the weeks passed, the silence only reminded him how empty his life had become. Each morning he woke to the same routine: coffee, a walk around the block, and long hours spent trying to work from home. He often caught himself staring out the window, watching the world move on without him. The neighbors waved politely, cars came and went, children played outside, but Ethan felt like a visitor in someone else's life. The one person who stood out to him from the beginning was the woman next door. He first saw her the day he moved in. A dignified woman with long dark hair streaked lightly with silver. Wearing a warm sweater and holding a clay pot filled with herbs, she gave him a small nod as he unloaded boxes, not the kind of curious stare people usually give new neighbors, but a gentle acknowledgement. Her calm presence struck him immediately. Her name, he later learned, was Alana Yazi. She was Apache, a widow, and a respected member of her community. People who visited her often spoke to her with affection and trust. She seemed like someone who carried stories inside her, quiet but powerful ones. Ethan admired that from afar, though he never said more than a polite hello. Alana lived in a house that looked loved, not just maintained. Wind chimes hung near her porch, making soft music whenever the wind passed. A small handmade sign near her walkway said, "Walk in beauty," and Ethan wondered if that simple phrase said something about how she lived her life. Her garden was full of plants he didn't recognize, but they grew with purpose rather than decoration. On many evenings, when Ethan stood outside to clear his mind, he would see her watering the plants or talking with visiting relatives. They laughed often, comfortably, in a way that made their home glow, even when the light was fading. Sometimes she lit candles near her window, and the calming scent of sage drifted across their yards. Ethan found comfort in it, even though he didn't understand the meaning behind the ritual. Despite living only a few steps away, they hardly spoke. It wasn't because Alana was unfriendly, quite the opposite. She had a natural warmth, but Ethan felt unsure of himself. After his divorce, his confidence had taken a slow but steady fall. He feared saying the wrong thing, appearing awkward, or unintentionally intruding on her space. So every time he saw her, he settled for a small smile or a simple greeting. Winter approached quietly. The neighborhood changed little by little. Lawns grew frosty in the mornings, lights appeared on porches, and the smell of pine trees floated in the air. But Christmas, once Ethan's favorite time of year, held no excitement for him now. Last year he had unwrapped gifts beside someone he thought would share the rest of his life. This year, he had no plans, no tree, and no desire to pretend everything was fine. He told himself it was only one holiday. People spent Christmas alone all the time. But deep down, he missed the simple things: warm meals, the sound of conversation, and the feeling of belonging somewhere. One cold afternoon, Ethan stepped outside with a mug of coffee, watching his breath rise like smoke. Snow clouds gathered in the sky, heavy and gray. He noticed Alana at the edge of her yard, struggling slightly as she lifted a bundle of firewood from the back of her truck. Something inside him nudged forward, a small push against the isolation he had wrapped around himself. He walked toward her, trying to appear casual. "Do you need help with that?" he asked. Alana looked up, surprised but not in an unpleasant way. Her eyes were warm, a deep brown that carried both strength and softness. "That would be very kind," she said with a small smile. "It's heavier than I expected." "Oh." Ethan took the bundle from her, and for a moment he felt like he had stepped into a different world, one where he wasn't just a man trying to escape his past, but someone capable of doing good again. They carried the wood to the side of her house where a neat stack was already growing. "Preparing for the cold?" he asked. "Yes," she answered. "My grandmother always said a warm home keeps the heart peaceful." She brushed a strand of hair away from her face. "I try to keep that in mind." Quote, Ethan smiled. It had been a long time since a simple sentence made him feel something gentle. "That sounds like good advice." "It is," she replied, looking at him closely, as if she sensed something about his quieter pain, but chose not to comment. "How are you settling in?" "Still getting used to things," he said honestly. "It's very different from where I lived before." "Different can be good," she said. "Sometimes new places help us breathe again." Her words, spoken lightly, felt as if they carried deeper meaning. Ethan wondered if she spoke from experience, but he didn't ask. He sensed she shared only what she chose. No more, no less. They talked for a few minutes, nothing heavy, just small exchanges about the weather, the neighborhood, and how quickly the year had passed. But the conversation felt surprisingly easy. Ethan found himself relaxing, his shoulders dropping from a tension he hadn't realized he held. Before he left, Alana gave him a soft nod. "Thank you for helping," she said. "I appreciate it." "You're welcome," he said, and meant it. As he walked home, he felt lighter than he had in months. It was a simple interaction, but he replayed it in his head throughout the evening, and found himself smiling without forcing it. Days passed, and life returned to its quiet rhythm. But now, when Ethan saw Alana outside, she waved a little more openly. Sometimes, she greeted him first. One morning she even placed a small bag of homemade bread on his doorstep, with a note that said, "For a warm morning." The gesture touched him more than he expected. Christmas approached quickly. Houses lit up with decorations. People bought gifts, cooked meals, and prepared for gatherings. But Ethan still had no plans. He told himself he would watch a movie, make something simple for dinner, and let the day pass like any other. Then, 3 days before Christmas, he heard a knock. When he opened the door, he found Alana standing there with a plate covered by a cloth. The smell of warm tamales drifted toward him. "I made too many," she said with a light laugh. "I thought you might enjoy some." Ethan accepted them gratefully. "They smell amazing. Thank you." She shifted slightly, as if deciding whether to take a small risk. Then her eyes met his. "I'm having a small Christmas Eve dinner," she said. "Nothing big, just food and company. If you'd like to join, you're welcome." Ethan blinked, surprised. For a moment he wasn't sure he had heard her correctly. Really?" he asked gently. "Yes," she replied. "It's good to spend holidays with people. Even if it's simple." He felt something warm spread through his chest, like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room and let fresh air in. "I'd like that," he said. "Thank you for inviting me." Her smile was soft but genuine. "Good. Then I'll see you on Christmas Eve." When she left, Ethan stood in his doorway for a long moment, holding the warm plate and feeling something he hadn't felt in many months. Anticipation. Not nervousness. Not sadness. Just a calm, gentle hope. And it came from a simple invitation from the neighbor he had barely spoken to, a woman who seemed to carry quiet wisdom, a woman whose presence already began to change the silent shape of his days. He didn't know what Christmas Eve would bring, but for the first time since his life had fallen apart, he wasn't afraid of what might happen next. He was curious, and that feeling alone was a gift he had been missing. He kept thinking about how naturally Alana had invited him, how her smile warmed the cold afternoon, and how the tamales she brought filled his home with a comforting aroma. On the morning of Christmas Eve, he found himself cleaning his house even though she wasn't coming over. It was simply the feeling of wanting to start fresh, as if tidying the space around him would tidy the space inside him too. After that, he decided to take a walk. Snow lay softly on the lawns, and the neighborhood looked peaceful, almost like a picture in a holiday card. As he passed Alana's home, he noticed her standing on her porch arranging small lanterns along the steps. They glowed gently even in the daylight, each one decorated with simple patterns. She spotted him and lifted her hand in greeting. "Good morning, Ethan," she called out. "Good morning," he replied, walking closer. She looked busy but serene. "Getting ready for tonight," she said. "I like to make things feel warm and welcoming." "They look beautiful," he said, genuinely admiring the soft glow of the lanterns. "Thank you," she said with a calm smile. My grandmother taught me to make them when I was young. She believed light guides good thoughts and good company. Ethan liked how everything Alana said carried meaning. Even simple things sounded peaceful when she said them. She reminded him of someone who had lived through many storms but still protected her calm like a flame that never went out. If you need help with anything, he offered, just let me know. She paused, looked at him thoughtfully, then nodded. Actually, yes. If you don't mind helping me bring in some bowls from the back, that would be nice. Of course, he said, happy to be useful. She led him through her backyard, which was covered lightly in snow but still showed signs of life. Herbs in pots, wind chimes hanging from a branch, and a small wooden bench carved with patterns he didn't recognize. Even in winter, her yard felt alive with stories. They walked into her kitchen from the back door. The warmth inside surprised him, like stepping into a soft blanket. The air smelled of cinnamon, corn, roasted vegetables, and something else he couldn't name but found comforting. You've been busy, he said. Cooking helps me think, she replied. And on holidays, I always make extra. You never know who might need a warm meal. Ethan's smile softened. She had a gentle heart. He could see it in everything she did. He carried the bowls to the dining area where she had already set up a simple table. A woven runner lay across the center, with pine branches and candles placed carefully along it. Nothing was extravagant, but it felt meaningful, like a home where every object held a memory. Your house is beautiful, Ethan said, placing the bowls on the counter. It's just a home, she replied modestly. But thank you. He lingered for a moment, unsure if he was in the way, but Alana didn't seem bothered. She moved around the kitchen with a natural grace, humming softly under her breath. Ethan watched her for a second, then looked away before she noticed. He didn't want to seem like he was staring. I should let you finish preparing, he said. I don't want to interrupt. You're not interrupting, she said warmly. But yes, I have a bit more to do. Come at 6. All right, I'll be there, he said. As he left, he felt something gentle settle in his chest, a mix of anticipation and gratefulness. He had been invited, included, welcomed. After months of feeling alone, it meant more than he could express. When evening came, Ethan dressed simply clean shirt, warm sweater, nothing fancy. He didn't want to appear as if he was trying too hard. He carried a small dessert he had bought earlier, unsure if it was enough but wanting to bring something. As he stepped outside, the neighborhood lights twinkled, and the air felt crisp. He could hear faint music coming from another house, laughter from across the street, and the distant sound of someone warming up their car. Normal sounds of a holiday evening, but tonight they felt comforting instead of lonely. When he reached Alana's door, the lanterns glowed more brightly now, casting warm patterns across the steps. He paused, took a breath to steady himself, and knocked lightly. The door opened in less than a minute. Alana stood there in a soft, earth-toned sweater and a simple necklace that looked handmade. Her hair was tied loosely at the back, and she looked relaxed, welcoming like the warmth inside her home had shaped her expression. Come in, she said with a smile. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The smell of dinner wrapped around him, warm, rich, comforting. Soft instrumental music floated through the air, gentle enough to blend into the background. You brought something? She asked, noticing the dessert. Just a little, he said shyly. That's kind. Thank you, she said, taking it from his hands. They moved toward the dining area, where the candles flickered softly. Everything looked simple but thoughtful. She had placed 2 chairs opposite each other. Not too close, not too far. I didn't know how many people would be here, Ethan admitted. Just us, she said calmly. I usually spend Christmas Eve with close family, but everyone is visiting different relatives this year. So I thought, maybe company would still be nice. Her words warmed him more than she could know. I'm glad you invited me, he said. I'm glad you accepted, she replied. They sat down, and she served the food, warm dishes filled with vegetables, spices, and familiar comfort. Ethan tasted each one with quiet appreciation. This is wonderful, he said sincerely. I'm happy you like it, she replied. As they ate, their conversation rose and fell naturally. They talked about small things first: his work-from-home days, her gardening routines, the neighborhood, the winter storms. But slowly, the conversation deepened, like a gentle river that found its way into deeper water. Ethan shared a little about his divorce. Not the painful details, but the feelings afterward, the confusion, the loneliness, the way he felt like a stranger in his own life. He spoke carefully, not wanting to bring sadness into the evening. But Alana listened with the kind of attention that made his words feel safe. "I understand," she said softly. "Change can leave us feeling unsteady, even when we know it's necessary." He looked at her, sensing she spoke from experience. "What about you?" he asked gently. "You mentioned once that your grandmother taught you many things. You speak of her like she's still guiding you." "She is," Alana said with a small, fond smile. "Even though she passed many years ago, I was raised to believe that people we love stay with us through the lessons they left behind." "That sounds comforting," he said. "It is," she replied. "And when my husband passed, those lessons helped me stay steady." Her voice was calm, not sorrowful, but respectful, like she had walked through grief and come out with something gentle rather than bitter. "I'm sorry," Ethan said softly. "Thank you," she replied. "It was hard. But love doesn't end. It just changes shape." Ethan nodded, absorbing her words. He admired how she spoke about life's difficult moments with so much softness. She didn't hide her past, but she didn't let it weigh the room either. The conversation shifted many times, each turn comfortable. They spoke about childhood memories, holiday traditions, small dreams for the future. Ethan laughed more than he expected, and Alana's quiet laughter lightened the room. Time passed without either of them noticing. At one point, snow began falling outside, soft and steady. The glow of the lanterns flickered gently through the window. "This night is really nice," Ethan admitted. "It is," Alana said, her voice warm. "Sometimes simple evenings carry the most peace." He couldn't help but agree. They finished dinner, moved to the living room with warm drinks, and continued talking in the soft glow of candlelight. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people sharing a quiet holiday evening. And somehow, in that ease, Ethan felt something slowly beginning to open inside him. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of trust, comfort, and perhaps the start of something gentle. As the snow continued falling and the warmth of the room wrapped around them, Ethan realized that this Christmas Eve was unlike any he had imagined. It wasn't filled with noise or gifts or grand celebrations. It was simple, it was warm, it was human. And for the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone. The night deepened slowly, as if time itself wanted to stretch out the peaceful evening between Ethan and Alana. The soft music playing in the background blended with the gentle crackling of the wood stove, creating a warm rhythm inside the living room. The snow outside thickened, falling in slow, calm flakes that made the world feel quiet and safe. Ethan sat on the couch with a cup of warm tea between his hands. The warmth of the mug settled into his palms, easing the last bits of tension from his shoulders. Across from him, Alana sat in an armchair, her own cup held delicately. The candles around the room danced softly in the dim light, casting a golden glow that made the entire room feel alive. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that allowed thoughts to breathe. "This is nice," Ethan finally said, looking around quietly. "I didn't realize how much I missed simple evenings like this." Alana nodded gently. "Quiet moments are good for the heart," she said. "They remind us to slow down." Ethan smiled softly. "I haven't slowed down in a long time. I kept running from things, mostly from myself." "You're not alone in that," she replied. "Many people try to outrun their pain instead of sitting with it. But sitting with it helps us understand what we need." He looked at her, noticing the calm strength in her expression. "You talk about pain like it's something you learn to live with peacefully." She breathed in slowly. "Pain teaches us, Ethan. Not quickly, not kindly, but eventually, with purpose." Her words settled on him gently, like the falling snow outside. He admired how she never spoke with bitterness. Even the hard parts of her life, she carried with quiet grace. A small rumble of wind shook the window, and the lights flickered. Ethan glanced upward, surprised. "The weather's getting worse," he said. "It does that here sometimes," Alana replied with a knowing smile. "Winter has its own personality." Time. A moment later, the lights flickered again, then dimmed, this time not returning. The music faded out, and the room fell into a softer, deeper warmth, lit only by the wood stove and candles. "Well," Ethan said with a small laugh, "I guess that settles the question of whether the storm is serious." Alana didn't seem troubled. "It happens," she said. "Power usually returns quickly. But even if it doesn't, we have enough light and warmth." Her calmness made him relax. There was something comforting about being in the dark with someone who wasn't afraid of it. She stood and added a log to the fire, the flames rising with a gentle whoosh. "Sit nearer if you'd like," she said. "It helps when the temperature drops." Ethan hesitated only a second before moving to sit closer to the stove. The warmth felt like a hug he hadn't known he needed. Alana sat nearby on the floor, leaning comfortably against a large cushion. She brought her blanket with her and placed it loosely across her lap. For a while, they watched the fire together. The flames rising, falling, and crackling softly. The quiet felt deeper now. A kind of shared space that didn't need to be filled. Finally, Alana spoke in a thoughtful tone. "You remind me of someone," she said. "Oh?" Ethan asked gently. "Who?" "A friend I once had," she replied. "He carried a lot on his shoulders, just like you. But he didn't realize how much lighter life could be if he allowed himself a little help." "Did he find that help?" Ethan asked. "Yes," she said, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "When he learned to trust again." "Trust is hard," Ethan admitted quietly, "especially after everything falls apart." "It is," she agreed. "But trust doesn't have to happen all at once. Sometimes it begins with one safe person." Ethan looked at her, wondering if she realized how much her words meant. "You're easy to talk to," he said honestly. "I don't know why, but it feels natural." "Some people's hearts recognize each other," she said softly, "even when the mind is still catching up." Her sentence made him pause. Something warm settled in his chest. Not romantic, not rushed, just a gentle connection forming between them. Another gust of wind shook the window, and snow tapped softly against the glass. Ethan looked outside and saw that the snowfall was now thick enough to blur the houses across the street. "Looks like the storm got serious after all," he said. "It seems so," Alana replied. Then she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "If the weather gets worse, it may not be safe for you to walk home." Ethan glanced at the deepening snow. "It's not far," he said, though he didn't sound convinced. "I'm not worried about the distance," she said gently. "I'm worried about ice forming. It happens suddenly after heavy snow." He nodded slowly. "You're right. You can stay here until it calms down," she offered. "I have a guest room. It's warm and comfortable." Her voice carried no pressure, only kindness. But Ethan hesitated out of courtesy. "I don't want to trouble you." "You won't," she said with a small smile. "I wouldn't offer if I didn't mean it." Ethan felt something soften inside him. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome," she replied. They returned to watching the fire, the glow painting their faces with a soft orange light. The storm outside continued to hum, but inside the room, everything felt gentle. After a few minutes, Alana pulled out a small wooden box from a shelf. It was carved with patterns that looked traditional and meaningful. "What's that?" Ethan asked curiously. "A memory box," she said. "I keep small things inside that remind me of peaceful moments." She opened it and showed him a few items: a dried flower, a folded paper with writing, a piece of fabric, a small stone, polished smooth. "This one," she said, touching the stone, "came from a trip I took after my husband passed. I needed to find quiet again. So I went to a place with a river. I picked this up because it reminded me that even stones change shape when life flows around them." Ethan listened, touched by the meaning behind such a small object. "That's beautiful," he said. She smiled quietly. "Would you like to hold it?" He nodded. She placed the stone gently into his hand. It was cool and smooth, with little imperfections that made it unique. "It feels calming," Ethan said. "That's why I kept it," she said. They talked about memories, then good ones, difficult ones, the little things people carry to remind themselves of hope. Ethan shared a story about a small notebook he used to keep, filled with quotes he found encouraging. Alana shared how her grandmother always used to say, "The heart rebuilds itself quietly." Their conversation flowed softly, naturally, like two rivers meeting and learning to move together. After some time, Alana stood and placed another log into the fire. "Would you like more tea?" she asked. "I'd love some," Ethan replied. As she prepared the tea, he watched her hands move with familiar grace. Everything she did, pouring water, arranging candles, tending the fire, seemed to be done with quiet intention. She lived with presence, something Ethan realized he had lost long ago. Alana brought the tea and sat beside him on the soft rug. They sipped quietly. "Do you ever think about starting fresh?" he asked suddenly. She looked into the fire for a moment before answering. "All the time. But I've learned that starting fresh doesn't always mean beginning a new life. Sometimes it means seeing the life we have with kinder eyes." "That's hard," Ethan admitted. "It is," she agreed. "But it becomes easier when we share our burdens with someone who listens." He met her gaze slowly. "You've listened tonight more than anyone has in a long time." She placed her cup down gently. "And you've spoken more openly than you realize." Their eyes held for a moment, soft, human, understanding. No rush, no tension, just two people acknowledging the comfort they found in each other's company. A deep silence filled the room again. But this time it felt warm, connected. When the fire dimmed slightly, Alana stood. "Let me show you the guest room," she said gently. "It's better to settle in before it gets too late." Ethan nodded and followed her down the hallway. The guest room was small but cozy, with a soft blanket folded at the foot of the bed and a warm lamp glowing beside it. "You'll be comfortable here," she said. "If you need anything, I'm just down the hall." "Thank you, Alana," he said sincerely, "for everything tonight." She gave a soft smile. "Good night, Ethan. Rest well." When she left the room, Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, taking a deep breath. He felt calm, he felt safe, he felt seen. And for the first time in months, maybe years, he felt that something inside him was slowly beginning to heal. Morning arrived slowly, as if the world outside wanted to give Ethan one more moment of quiet before waking him. A soft gray light slipped through the curtains of the guest room, making gentle patterns on the blanket. When Ethan opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was warmth, the kind that didn't just come from the room, but from the memory of the night before. He sat up slowly, listening to the peaceful stillness of Alana's home. The storm had settled, and the wind no longer pressed against the windows. The air felt calm, like the house was resting too. Ethan rubbed his hands over his face, still surprised by how comfortable he had felt in a place that wasn't his own. He had slept deeply, more deeply than he had in months, without the usual weight that followed him everywhere. Something inside him had shifted, not in a dramatic way, but in a gentle, healing way. After a moment, he stood and smoothed the blanket, wanting to leave the room exactly as he found it. When he opened the door, the warm smell of coffee drifted toward him. It wasn't strong, just enough to welcome him. He followed the scent to the kitchen. Alana stood by the counter, pouring hot water into a cup. She wore a soft shawl over her shoulders, and her hair hung loosely down her back. When she turned and saw him, her smile was warm, easy, familiar, as if seeing him there was the most natural thing. "Good morning," she said gently. "I hope you slept well." "I did," Ethan answered honestly. "Better than I have in a long time. Thank you again for letting me stay." "You're welcome," she said. With the storm, it was the safest thing to do. Ethan nodded, though he felt that safety had come from more than just avoiding bad weather. She poured another cup and handed it to him. "Here," she said. "It's a light blend. Nothing too strong. Perfect, he said, wrapping his hands around the mug. The warmth settled into his fingers the way comfort settles into a tired heart. They moved to the small table near the window. Outside, the snow gleamed softly under the early light. The lanterns on her porch still held a faint glow, leftovers from the night before. For a moment, they simply sat quietly, sipping their drinks. "I hope the bed wasn't too soft," Alana said with a calm laugh. "Some guests say it makes them sleep too much. Too much sleep sounds like a blessing." Ethan replied with a smile. It was perfect. She seemed pleased by his answer. A gentle silence settled between them, not awkward, not heavy, just peaceful. The kind that made Ethan feel like he could breathe freely. He watched Alana for a moment, noticing again the way she carried herself with calm presence, as if she had learned the art of kindness through years of understanding life's hardest moments. When she looked up and caught his gaze, she tilted her head slightly. "You seem quieter this morning," she said softly. "In a good way." Ethan nodded. "I feel rested, not just physically. Last night meant a lot to me." Her eyes softened with understanding. "I'm glad. Sometimes people come into our lives at the right moment, even when it feels unexpected." He took a slow sip of coffee, letting her words sit inside him. "I didn't expect to spend Christmas like this," he said truthfully. "I thought I would be alone. I had prepared myself for it. And instead," she said gently, "you found a warm place to rest." "Yes," he replied, voice steady. "I did." Alana wrapped her hands around her own cup, her expression thoughtful. "This house has seen many quiet mornings and many heavy ones. It's good to fill it with peaceful company again." Ethan felt the warmth of her words settle into his heart. He hesitated, then said, "I hope it didn't feel strange having someone here." "No," she answered simply. "It felt right." The honesty in her tone surprised him, warming him from the inside out. She wasn't saying anything dramatic or emotional, just something true. And that truth felt like a gentle light rising between them. After finishing their drinks, Alana stood and moved to the stove. "I kept some breakfast simple this morning," she said. "Just warm bread and fruit." "That sounds perfect," Ethan said. They ate together, talking lightly about the snowfall, about how the neighborhood would look bright and clean once the sun fully appeared, and about how quiet mornings always carried a special kind of magic. At one point, Alana shared a memory of her grandmother telling stories during winter mornings, and Ethan found himself smiling at the picture her words created. When they finished eating, Ethan helped clear the table, even though she protested gently at first. "Guests shouldn't clean," she said with a soft laugh. "Then let's say I'm helping a friend," he answered. Her smile in response was warm enough to melt the remaining tension inside him. After the dishes were washed, they moved to the living room. The fire had burned down into soft embers, but the room still held a trace of last night's glow. Ethan looked around, taking in the quiet beauty of the space, the carefully arranged shelves, the handmade decorations, the woven blanket on the couch. "It feels strange to say this," Ethan began, "but last night changed something for me." Alana looked at him with patient attention. "How so?" I think I remembered what it feels like to feel safe with someone. To just talk. To be listened to." Her expression softened. "We all need connection, Ethan. Even the quiet kind." "I didn't realize how much I missed it," he said. Alana placed her hands gently on her lap. "Sometimes life becomes loud with worry, and we forget the sound of calm. But calm doesn't disappear. It waits for us to notice it again." Ethan let those words rest inside him like a gentle weight. "You speak like someone who's healed from a lot," he said carefully. Her gaze didn't waver. "Healing isn't a finish line. It's something we walk toward, slowly. Every day. Some days we take steps forward. Some days we rest. But walking with someone, even for a while, can make the path easier." Ethan felt his breath catch slightly, not from surprise but from understanding. "You've helped me more than you know," he said quietly. "And you've brought warmth into my home," she replied. "That matters too." The room fell into another soft silence. Ethan didn't rush to fill it. He simply let himself feel the quiet safety they had built. After a while, he stood and moved toward the window. The snow outside sparkled under a soft stretch of sunlight that had finally broken through the clouds. "It looks beautiful," he said. "It does," Alana agreed, joining him beside the window. "Snow always reminds me of new beginnings." Ethan looked at her face, calm and thoughtful. "Do you believe this is a new beginning?" he asked gently. She met his eyes. "It could be, if we choose to let it." Something warm spread through Ethan's chest, not excitement, not nervousness, but a quiet hope. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a declaration. It was simply understanding. Two people, both carrying their own pasts, both finding peace in the same moment. He nodded slowly. "I'd like that." Her smile was small but full of meaning. "So would I." For a long while they stood by the window, watching the sunlight touch the snow. Their shoulders didn't touch, but the space between them felt warm, shared, gentle. Eventually, Ethan knew it was time to leave. The storm had passed, and the world had awakened. He picked up his coat from the chair. "Thank you," he said again, looking at her with sincere gratitude. "For dinner, for the room, for everything." "You're welcome, Ethan," she said. "Come visit any time. My door is open." He felt the truth in her words. He wasn't just being polite. He wanted to come back. Not because he felt lonely, but because he had found somewhere that made him feel steady again. As he stepped outside, the cold air brushed his face. But it didn't feel harsh. The snow crunched softly under his feet. When he turned back, he saw Alana standing in the doorway, wrapped in her shawl, her eyes warm, her smile gentle. He lifted his hand in a small wave. She returned it. Walking home, he realized something important. The night hadn't ended in drama or confusion. It had ended in understanding, in kindness, in quiet connection. It had ended in a way that gave him hope, a hope that grew quietly inside him, like the first light of morning. He didn't know exactly what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He no longer walked through his days alone, and that was the beginning of something new.